Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out to attend the short webinar on Luware cloud-based call routing and contact center solution. So my name is Jane O'Doherty. I'm the account manager for VEI Global, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Bill Kenny, also an account manager, and Ollie Lively. Ollie's our Luware partner manager. So following the introductions, Ollie will be moving into a short demo after this. So the purpose of the webinar today is to highlight some of the key challenges we've seen faced by our customer base today when they've made the decision or are considering a migration to Microsoft Teams. And we want to show how onboarding with Luware has addressed those challenges and why VEI Global is a reliable and skilled partner for you to work with. So what have the customer challenges been? Well, we've noticed a lot of our customers relying very heavily on their legacy infrastructure to deliver such things as contact center functionality, which they can't do within Teams, call routing and reporting, and they still have a need for live visibility of what's happening within their contact center. So you'll see when Ollie goes through the solution how Luware Live and historical dashboards addresses that. Another area is call handling and transferring of calls, and you'll see how Luware Attendant console will address that. Intelligent routing and administration, we've got Luware Workflow Editor, which will address those issues. Other areas that customers have been concerned with is how do they actually migrate away from what they've been used to for 20 plus years sometimes, and how do they integrate with the existing solution whilst they migrate, or do they just go with one full steam ahead approach? Areas to look at and consideration around the CRM that they're already using, how to integrate with that. Costs are also a huge implication, and that was one of the reasons why we onboarded with Luware as well. We like the cost model. It's not within the contact center a costly per agent cost, it's per queue based, which can often work out more cost effective. Areas around recording and compliance. So we can cover off various aspects of people's requirements for recording and whether they need PCI compliance or not. So why work with VEI? Well, we're not new to this. VEI has a long history of Microsoft integrations. We have a high level of skills within our engineering resource. We've been doing this for a long time. Our engineering team have been working with integrations from the early days of Exchange Server 2007 through OCS, Microsoft Link, right up to today to Teams Multi-Tenant 2020. We look at the migration steps of how our customers actually want to move to Teams. Are they already using it for UC? They're now moving to voice and then integrating the contact center. So we work with you and talk with you and come up with a plan on how to do that. So I'm going to hand over to Ollie now, who's going to talk a little bit about Luware and then move into the demonstration.
Great, thanks very much, Jane. Thanks for, nice to see you all today. So we've developed an application called Luware Nimbus. The purpose of Nimbus is essentially to enhance and extend the functionality within Teams. So we very much have a philosophy of keeping Teams as the core collaboration and telephony platform. But as some of you might know, that the Teams native features sometimes don't cover all the use cases for public sector, private sector, and any organization that handles a lot of phone calls. So we've been certified by Microsoft at the extend level of integration. So we were one of the first to do that. So we're fully certified by Microsoft. It was very important to us that we deliver Nimbus as a true SaaS application. So we host everything in Azure. All updates, upgrades, bug fixes, and feature releases are all rolled out automatically to all of our customers. So you don't have to worry about hosting any of it or managing any of it in your own infrastructure. And we try to leverage the wider Microsoft ecosystem. So where it makes sense, we can use tools like Power BI and Power Automate. So I'm going to move into a demonstration now to show you how we can address some of those challenges that Jane outlined. So I've come into my Teams app here, and this is where we will find Nimbus. So as I said, we want the user experience to remain as central to Teams as possible. So to access the Nimbus app, all you need to do is come in here, and then you'll be greeted by a few different dashboards. So I'm going to take you through a few of these. I'll start with the kind of visibility and reporting. So if you just use Teams as a native application, what we've heard from many of our customers is that it's quite difficult to actually see what's going on. And this is both from a live perspective and a historical perspective. So we've got 3 dashboards here that I'll take you through that are really going to give you some enhanced visibility about how many people are waiting in real time, but also the availability of our agents. So this is on my services dashboard. This will show me each of the call groups or services that I've been assigned to here as a column. So these might represent different customer service teams, accounts teams, sales teams, or marketing teams. So essentially each one of these columns is a different team of users handling calls. So I'm going to take you to this reporting service here, and here we'll be able to see if we've got enough available users to handle the current call volume. So we can see here we've got 1 caller waiting in the queue and 1 user available. Okay, so for the moment we're okay, but as callers start to stack up here, we might get into a situation where we've got more people waiting than users available. So this is going to show us straight away whether we've got enough capacity to handle those calls. If we then look a bit further down at our users, this is going to show us the state of all the users that are assigned to this group. So we can see Alex at the top here. He's currently in the inactive state. That just means he's logged out of the service. So he's decided to opt himself out of this queue so he won't be distributed any calls. Now, as a supervisor here, I might want Alex logged in answering calls. It might be his turn to answer calls. It might be his shift. So we can then override this and log Alex in. So I've now logged him into the service. However, he's now gone to this not available state. That means that he's not available to take a call, and we're still not going to distribute a call to him, even though we've just logged him into the service. So that might be for a number of reasons. He might be in another Teams meeting. He might be in a Teams call. He might be offline in Teams completely. So it's really important here that we're using the team status to decide whether we distribute a call to them. Because obviously, if he's in another Teams meeting, you're not going to want to distribute a contact center call to him because he won't be able to take that call. The inactive state, as I said, just means he's logged out. And now if I go down here and log myself in, you'll see that I'm logged in and I'm in that available state. That means that I'm available to take a call because as you can see, I'm green in Teams here. I'm logged into the service, so I'm available to take a call in this group. Okay. So that's my services dashboard. That gives me that live supervisor control. Now I'll show you a dashboard which might be useful to put up on a wallboard or put up in an office somewhere. So this in the top left, I can just filter between my different groups. And I've looked at our reporting group again because that has some live data in it. So here I'm able to see all of the callers and their state. So I can see the callers that are in the queue, the callers that are in the IVR, and the connected calls. And I can see which agents those connected calls are connected to. Okay, so this is going to give us that 360 live view of the user group there. And on the right-hand side, I can see my users again, but this time I'm going to get a bit more information about how long they've been in those states for. So I can see that Alex here, because I logged him in just over a minute ago, he's been in that not available state for a couple of minutes there. So as a supervisor, as a manager, I can go through here and I can track all of my users and see how long they've been in those states for. Finally, it's also important to track performance and KPIs and SLAs over a bit more of a longer period. So we've developed this reporting dashboard here to show us the most important KPIs in a really intuitive and easy to use dashboard. So again, we can select different dashboards here in the top left. So I'm going to choose the team that I'm essentially looking at. I'm going to have a look at our UK team here. So this is going to show me a number of different SLAs and KPIs across these donuts at the top. So we can see here the amount of calls that have been handled versus not handled. We can look at things like our acceptance SLA. So we allow you to choose an SLA for each service. So you might say for your customer service team, we want to answer all calls within 2 minutes of them ringing. And then this is going to track how we're performing against that target. Here we can see our average queue times, our average connected times. We can also toggle between different time periods. I might only be interested in looking at the performance over the last week or over the last 30 days, for example. So it allows us to toggle the data with those time periods. this bar chart is an interactive chart here where we can track the outcomes of calls. So I can see here on a specific day or over a certain time period, how many calls are going to voicemail, how many callers are coming in, then hanging up, or how many calls are being transferred. So this is going to track all of those different outcomes there. So we'll easily be able to spot some trends. So if we see, for example, that we suddenly get a spike in the amount of callers hanging up, we know that the abandoned calls is going up. We might want to check the queue times there to see if people are waiting longer and that's causing them to hang up. Bottom right here, bottom left, we can track the user statistics. So we can have a look at our user performance. So we can see here accepted and declined calls per user. But we also have this concept of Rona calls. So a Rona call is where I'm distributed a call. I don't answer it, I don't decline it, but it just bounces on to the next person. So if somebody's just ignoring their calls and letting it bounce onto their colleagues, we're going to track that with those Rona calls. And then bottom right here, we can track in this heat map of when we're busiest and answering the most calls, but also when we're missing calls. So if we're always missing calls at a certain time period during the week, or we can track this over previous weeks, we can then look at our scheduling. We can say, okay, maybe we don't have enough staff here on a Tuesday morning, or maybe everyone's going for lunch at the same time, so we're missing calls at lunch. Okay, so with those dashboards and with things like Power BI, which we also have a template for, we're going to give you much more enhanced visibility and view of what's happening in your team's contact center. Okay, so the next challenge we're going to look to address here is more of a user challenge. So what our customers have said is, okay, Teams is great for handling calls. Okay, it's very intuitive. Everyone knows that Teams pop-up that comes in the bottom right. But let's say that you wanted to take that a step further and actually start delivering relevant information to your users with the CRM integration, for example, then it's quite difficult to do that with Teams as a native application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop Nimbus into its own window, and then I'm going to go to our My Sessions dashboard. Okay, so this is where I would sit as a user if I'm handling calls on a regular basis. So I'm going to log into our Salesforce showcase service here and show you how we'll actually answer a call as a user. So this is My Sessions dashboard. I can see here as a user all of my previous interactions, the ones I've accepted, declined, and I can see the results of those interactions. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a call in here via our Salesforce showcase to show you how we answer that call. So I'm going to put this call in as a mobile. Okay, so I put that call in as an external caller here into the Salesforce showcase. So what's going to happen now, you can hear that I'm just queuing here as an external caller. This is going to be distributed to the users that are logged into that queue. So this is probably going to one of my other colleagues at the moment. So when it's my turn to answer the call, this will appear as a call for my agent here. So I'm just going to answer this call as it comes in. Just give it a few seconds. So that probably got distributed to one of my other colleagues first, but you can see it's now my turn to answer that call. So I'm being distributed that call as a standard Teams call here. Okay, so that's telling me the name of the queue and I can just answer that call there. So that experience of being delivered a call is exactly the same as any other Teams call. Okay, so from a user adoption perspective, your users don't have to learn any new interface. They can still come into their normal Teams call handling window. They can transfer that call. They can do a consultative transfer. They can add people into that call. So it's very important to us that we use the Teams call handling window here because that's what everyone's used to using. So we're not going to change that experience at all. Now, if we look at our My Sessions dashboard here, we can see that we've got Bob Blogs and that's the connected call. So we're getting the name of Bob Blogs here from our CRM system. We can see how long they waited for in the queue. So we can see he waited for 48 seconds before having that call answered. You could hear the wait there as I was waiting on my mobile. And then we can see some information about Bob Blogs. And this is, again, pulling this from the CRM. Now, if we pop this out into a screen pop here, what I've said there by using that conversation context is I've said, let's actually go and pop Bob Blogs' record in the CRM. So we can get this to pop up as soon as that call is answered, or we can manually trigger it as I did there. So now as an agent, I have some relevant information about Bob Blogs here ready to look at. So I can see his information here, and then we can also log some of the activities against his call record here. So every time that Bob Blogs calls in here, what we're doing is we're logging a call record. So that means as an agent looking at this, answering his call next time, we can see all the times that he's called in, and your agents don't have to manually remember to do that. Let's say that Bob comes in and then he hangs up. So that's an abandoned call. We can also create a notification of that. Or let's say you want to offer him a call back. We can also log that in your CRM system. So it's not just Salesforce that we can do this with. We can do this with hundreds of other CRMs. So if you do have a specific integration, please come and speak to VEI and we'll help you scope that out. But yeah, it's not just Salesforce. It's basically any web-based CRM system. Okay. So I'm going to come back to my my sessions dashboard here, and this is where we can start to add some extra detail to this call. So we can select codes here. We can select a primary code and a secondary code. So this is if you actually want to start reporting on the reasons for your calls or the outcomes of your calls. So this is just going to enhance the data available to you, but it's all in this intuitive, easy to use agent interface. So the final area I'd like to cover here is another kind of user use case. So if you're just handling calls kind of as part of a team, then we would suggest just using the normal Teams call window, as I showed you before. However, a lot of our customers, they have a certain use case where it might be a receptionist or an operator who is handling a lot of calls, and then they're transferring those calls on. So if I am in that situation where I'm transferring a lot of my calls, then I can use the attendant console here to handle that call. So I've still got that active call from Bob Blogs here. I can see that in my attendant console. I can still see all my queues here on the right-hand side, so I can opt in and out of my different queues. In an attendant console scenario, this might be different sites, for example. So I might have different sites here, London, Switzerland, Nottingham, where I'm going to log out of those different sites to answer calls. And when I have this active call now, using my attendant console, I can search for contacts or I can view different favorites groups here. And this will allow me to see the availability of my colleagues. So I can see straight away here that Christopher, David, John, and Kerry are all offline. So it's probably not going to be a good idea to transfer calls to them because they're offline. It's also going to show us some relevant information like their job title. We can add custom notes here. And then we can also use these intelligent call transfer buttons. So we've got a safe transfer. That means if I safe transfer it to David and he doesn't answer, I will get that call back so I can do something else with it. So if it's an important call, I can use the safe transfer to make sure that call isn't dropped. Here I can just do a blind transfer. That will just send the call across to David. I won't get that call back. But if I want to speak to him first and see if he wants to take that call, I can use the consultative transfer there. So I can choose the appropriate transfer option based on that caller. When I select one of these options, I can go in and then decide where I'm going to transfer that call. So the UPM will transfer across to their Teams endpoint. The voicemail there will just transfer straight to voicemail. I might know that this person doesn't really want to take the call, but they can take a voicemail. And if he does have an external mobile or an external landline in his Active Directory record, I could also try those locations. So let's say, for example, that I've tried to transfer to David's Teams account. He didn't answer. I can then try his mobile number as well. Okay, so I've got those different transfer options available to me. And then if we look at some other options here, I might actually want to notify David that this person was trying to call him. So I know that he can answer the call because he's offline. But if I go in here, I can then select a message to be sent to him in Teams. So this is just going to send a message to David saying this person with this mobile number tried to call you. Can you call them back? So as a call handler or a user there, that's really going to speed up the process. I don't have to manually type out that message. I don't have to copy and paste or take down the caller's number. That's automatically going to put that in a template straight into David's Teams message, ready to send across to him. Okay. Finally here, I might need to advise the caller on when David's going to be available. So I can say to the caller, okay, I can see he was in meetings from 9 to 11, so maybe try and call back at 1 o'clock because I can see he's free at that point. Okay, so that's the attendant console there, and that's designed for any of those users who are transferring most of their calls. Okay, so we've covered a couple of user kind of stories there and a couple of the user challenges, just giving enhanced user experience to Teams calls. Now I want to finish off by showing you some of the more intelligent call routing options with our configuration tool. So If I don't know if any of you have actually gone in and tried to configure Teams call queues, configure opening hours. Obviously, you can do that in Teams natively, but the feedback we get is that often it's quite complex and you need quite a high level of training before you can start doing that. Our aim here is to actually make this a bit more intuitive. So if you do have managers, you do have supervisors, instead of them always relying on the central IT team or even relying on their provider to make these changes, we actually give them the tools to do this themselves. So we can build role-based access here to say, okay, the manager of this customer service team, they just have access to the configuration of their team, but no other teams. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the reliance on the IT team, the reliance on raising tickets with the partner, and it's going to mean you can make these configuration changes much quicker. Let's say that you have a bank holiday or you have an emergency that happens. Instead of having to log a ticket with your provider to make the change to the announcements, you can just come in here and do it. So I'll take you through a couple of these areas. We'll look at the opening hours. So this is the kind of first step here to building out your call flow. So with the opening hours, we can build out our schedules. So in here, we can say we're open between the hours of 8 and 11, then we have a lunch break. And then if we go in here, we can add new periods, we can add a holiday period, or we can add special routing periods. So let's say, for example, between the hours of 8 and 10 a.m., you want the calls routed to your security team, and then from the hours of 10 to 6 you want it routed to your reception team. We can create these special periods here at these time slots. So once we've set our calendar and we're happy with that, we'll then move on to our workflows. So all of your call flows, all of the behavior as a caller comes in is governed by the workflows. Again, this is just a drag and drop tool, which makes it easy to design and customize those call flows. So I'm just going to create a quick one here from scratch to show you some of the options available. So if we go in here, we might want to start by checking our opening hours. So at the top of the call flow, we can say when we're open, we can decide one activity, and when we're closed or when we're on holiday or one of those special routing periods, we can choose a different kind of call flow. So let's say when we're open, we want to start with an auto attendant or an IVR. We would just use our input customer activity here. We can use text to speech. So we've got over 100 different languages here. So if I just search English there, we can choose our English speaker, and we can choose the accent available to us there. So if we just choose one of these, I can say, hello and welcome to the webinar. And then we can play that back to check that we're happy with it. Okay. Or you can upload your own audio file. If we have a look a bit further down, this is when we'll be able to configure the different routing options. So let's say here, okay, option 1 is customer service and option 2 is reception. Okay, so those are our different options on the IVR. Let's minimize that and decide where these are going to route to. So the customer service team, let's just say that's a transfer off to another team there. So we can transfer this off to another service. So that goes off to our UK contact center team here. We can also transfer that call externally if we wanted to. Before sending a call to a group of users here, we can just do that by sending it to the queue. So when we send a call to the queue, that's going to send it to the available users in that call group. Before sending it there, though, there's some checks that we can do. So let's say that we want to check the availability of the users. So this can be used to really improve the efficiency of those call flows. So we don't really want to send callers down into a queue where there's no one available. So we're only going to send callers into this queue here if we know there's somebody directly available. That means that a caller isn't going to be sitting in a queue where no one's available. So if we know there's no one available in this reception team, let's actually just send them off to the customer service team instead. And that just means that callers aren't just going to be sitting there waiting for their calls to be answered. We can proactively manage that in a more efficient way. If we finish this off here, when we're closed, we can play an announcement saying we're closed. And then we can also just send to a voicemail. Okay, so that will go to a voicemail. Just to highlight a new feature we've added here, in the announcements, we can actually add parameters in here. So if we are integrating this with a CRM, we can take the name of the caller, we can take their order reference number, we can take the status of their order, and we can actually use our announcements to play that back to the caller. So let's think of a quick example where you're calling in to get an update on your order status. We could play an announcement back saying, hi Ollie, thanks for calling. It will take the caller's name out of the CRM, and then it can say, Press 1 if you want to know the status of your current order, and then we can take information out of the CRM system and say your order is out for delivery and the expected delivery date is 26th of May, for example. So this will allow us to add dynamic parameters into the announcements and actually help you automate some of the queries. So if you find that 50% of your queries are just to check the status of an order, for example, and you can actually automate that, then that's going to save you and your agents a lot of time. Okay, but those are the 3 areas that we've covered there. So just to recap, with Nimbus, we can provide extra reporting and visibility of both your callers, but also your agents. We can also make your agents' life easier by giving them relevant information with CRM screen pops, and also make any operators' lives easier with the Attendant console, make it much easier to transfer calls. And then to finish there, we can make it much more flexible and give you much more intelligent call routing options and give the power back to your user base to actually make some of those changes themselves. I'll hand back to Jane now to finish off and to take you through some customer projects that VEI have implemented.
Yeah, this is just really to give a short overview of the type of projects that we've done recently with customers. I know some of you on the call may recognize some of these, but typical customer, a local council with multiple sites, had legacy technology for over 20 years, had made the decision to move to Teams with unified communications, then moved into voice. So it was a case of having to look then at the contact center, but this customer in particular just wanted to do it in a more managed way. So VEI, we integrated the existing PBX on site via session border controllers. We looked after the porting of all the numbers, the management of the SIP. Sometime down the line then the customer wanted to look at a contact center that was fully embedded within the Teams app. So they opted for Luware with advanced queues and Attendant console. We've then gone down the road with them of looking at developing some bespoke Power BI reports for specific requirements that they had. Another local council who had already migrated to MS Teams was looking for a solution to manage basically their housing. So they have onboarded with Luware as well, with enterprise queues and Attendant console. Another public sector authority, 750 users, main site based in Dublin, but sites all over, basically went down the road of Microsoft Direct Routing. They have onboarded with Luware, enterprise queues and Attendant console, and they've also now got call recording on board from Luware as well. So all quite similar in what they were looking for, but have done it in different ways. We've worked with each of them in managing how they want to do it. So we're happy to talk to every customer about their own specific needs and work with you on that. So I'm not sure if anybody has really asked any questions on this, or if you want us to follow up afterwards, please drop us a note. We have recorded the session as well, but I think that's pretty much it from us today, and thank you for attending.